I'm Audie Cornish, and this is The Assignment. And the WNBA launched in 1996 when I was captain of my high school basketball team. Don't get excited, because we were terrible, but we were stoked. So Team USA had Olympic stars like Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops, and yes, I rocked the original Nike Swoops with pride. But the arrival of Gen Z college stars and Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark have fueled an explosion in attention in recent years that has been good, bad, and ugly. But as the league hits the offseason, there's only been more drama. Union negotiations have been ugly, and not one but two potential new women's pro ball startups are threatening to poach from the league's roster of long underpaid free agents. So as it said, more money, more problems. What does the WNBA boom tell us about what's next for women's pro sports? So, Carrie Champion, hi, how are you?
That was wonderful.
So you're here as host of Naked Sports with Carrie Champion. You're a contributor here at CNN, and you are literally the only person I wanted to talk to about this.
I appreciate you so. I have so much to say about it. So much.
Well, every time we've had you on air, you've been this obviously you're an ex-athlete, started in tennis, I believe, and you're always like defending women's sports and how people talk about them. But then I saw you, Carrie, on the first broadcast for the new women's track and field event spectacle known as Athlos. This is fascinating for a couple of reasons.
Yes.
One, it's event programming.
Yes.
Right?
Live
in
programming.
An era where live sports is the money in TV, whether it's football or basketball or whatever like the fight for the streaming rights of various sporting events is huge.
Yeah.
And then number two, track and field, in a way, it kind of makes sense when I think about it, right?
Yep.
Like when you think about some of the sports for women that during the Olympics, everybody is glued to. But lastly, this is where it ties into the WNBA. You're telling me this story about being in a hub of potential investment, talking to a potential investor about professional women's sports. A new one, right? Like launching a new venture. And it feels like, why now?
Yeah, I think the investment shows that there's so much money to be made.
Yeah,
because there were before this boom, if you will. You talk about the last 5 years. There were only about two main investors in the WNBA that I can think of, just like off the bat, which was like Ally Bank and State Farm. But those dollars that were committed, and I've talked to people who are in charge of marketing. In fact, I just did a panel with the global head of marketing at Ally. She said, we've been here since the beginning, but we have noticed that people are investing more because now that they see that this is a product which deserves investment and they can see the return on the investment, there's so much money. So say, for instance, I'm not a banker, but I have a glass that has maybe a quarter full, right? That's how much money they were getting. They were getting maybe less than 25%, if I'm being honest. And all of these marketing dollars were going elsewhere, and they weren't seeing any return on that investment in terms of cult-like fans, right. People who are interested in, now we talk about the men who are interested in the sport, and there are various reasons why they are. They may, as simple as they may think the chicks are hot, to this is actually entertaining. Their words, not mine. But I have noticed, she said, I've noticed that because there are so many more dollars that can be put there as opposed to investing in an NBA, which is great, always a good model, but very crowded, as opposed to investing in hockey, great, good model, crowded. There are things like the F1 that people, the rise of F1, the rise of the WNBA, the rise of another professional volleyball league, Love, which just started a new chapter in LA owned by Alexis Ohanian. So they're starting to see what the investment looks like. And I think if I'm being honest, it started, yes, with Angel and Caitlin in terms of this new generation and what they've wanted. But I'm going to go back a bit further than that. Do you remember when there was, and her name was Sidonia, but she was in the NCAA tournament, and I can't remember the school that she was in. It could have been Colorado or Oregon at the time. She transferred to a bunch of different schools, but she took her little phone and she started to film
her little phone.
She took her phone, this thing that can get you in trouble, and she filmed the gymnasium of where the women were training for the NCAA tournament, and then she went to where the men were training across the way, and it showed the difference. The women's weight room had maybe 5 or 6 weights. I'm exaggerating, but it was empty, like this empty hall, this empty ballroom with a few weights, and the men had the state-of-the-art training facility. That story went viral. And from that moment on, people started to see visually and say, are you serious? Is this really a thing? And they started to invest in women's sports. And then when NIL came along and Dawn Staley started to win with South Carolina, and she was, killing the old school team of UConn and Gino Auriemma, not the same anymore.
Yeah.
But they started to see. And so people started to say, well, this one is unfair, but 2, these girls are really good.
Yeah. So caliber of play makes a difference. And March Madness is so huge. It's just such enormous business that in of itself is a platform for college stars. There just wasn't that much more you could go to. You could go to the WNBA, but the pay was so low there. People were playing abroad in the off season. Mm-hmm. It feels like this is a real shift because of this mainstream attention.
It's a huge shift.
As you talked about the money, that also means even the branding opportunities for the players. Like, I think I was reading that Caitlin Clark makes something like 1%, right? Her pay is like $78,000, but she clears well over 10 or 11 million
easy
in sponsorships and deals.
Yes. She had a $20 million, her rookie year, she had a $20 million Nike deal. Unheard of. It was her rookie year. She was
me and my little swoops going back to the 90s.
Unheard of for women's sports. I know that sounds like a small number in comparison to men, but for women's sports, especially for a rookie, Nike really invested in her. And as a result, they started paying everyone else. Not so much like they're paying her, but women are starting to see these 7-figure deals in a huge way. And I think it can only do, all it does is raise the sport. Women are much more successful. And they have a lot more disposable income. You go to these games, women have no problem spending courtside. My friend has courtside tickets for the New York Liberty. She bought them 5 years ago when it wasn't a thing. Now she has the hottest ticket in town. Like, the return on investment in that for her was crazy, but she has always been loyal. And that's what you'll see. You'll see women who really did love the sport had already been investing in it, and people are starting to follow suit.
And with that comes some things like Coach now has a brand deal with the league. Like, Coach, I don't know if people are on Instagram. Beauty. They can watch League Fits and see all of the outfits people are wearing in the tunnel. When the WNBA first started, they weren't allowed to wear jeans, and they had to dress in a feminine way so people wouldn't think they were a bunch of lesbians. And I'm not saying this in a joking way. I'm saying that's extremely important in an era where now people talk about a league that has a lot of queer players who are outspoken and like part of the conversation and dynamic, and I think has been part of the reason the league is also in the culture wars so firmly.
Yeah,
because there's race, there's sexuality, like everything. There's a lot to argue about when it comes to the WNBA.
The NBA gave birth to the WNBA. You talked about the reason why they did it. They started off with 12 teams, and it was hard to keep these teams afloat in terms of financing. So the NBA for years kept these teams afloat, and there was a model that they wanted to put out, and that model also reflected how the beginning of the NBA started. There was a time in the NBA where they only could wear suits. And there was this guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Allen Iverson, who came in and said,
of course.
I'm changing what this looks like. And they started to bring their culture and their style to the league. And for what it's worth, the NBA has always led the way in terms of being the first. That's why it was so difficult to understand why the WNBA had all of these rules. I would interview these women, and they made me feel like they would get in trouble if they said something they weren't supposed to.
Because you couldn't look or sound vulgar.
Correct.
It was an extension of the culture policing of Iverson, who was seen as a bad boy and who was bringing like the wrong sensibility, was accused of being a kind of violent personality. But it extended to the women's game, which is like, no one wants to see you women not acting like women, whatever
how
that
society
definition
says,
is.
Whatever that definition is. It reminds me, I've been watching Downton Abbey. Have you?
I
Have you
have.
seen it? Have you seen it? I know you've seen
I
it.
only
I'm just
care about
catching
the
up.
connection you're about to draw, Carrie. What?
So the whole time I'm watching Downton Abbey now, all I can think of is the fight to keep Downton Abbey and how houses like those didn't exist with staff and a valet and they were like, and they're forcing everyone and the old versus the new. The dad doesn't want to change the way that they make money, and the old versus the new, and they're dragging them into the future. And Miss Patmore doesn't want a refrigerator. She doesn't need a refrigerator. She's like, why do I need a refrigerator? She doesn't want. She's like, we have an ice machine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then there's the stir that helps you make the cakes. And she's like, I can do it with my arms. I don't need this machine, And that's what they were doing with the WNBA until they realized the more that we allow these women to be free and be themselves, the more that we are going to attract the fans that actually want to see them. Novel idea. Let someone be authentic and see what happens, right? Novel idea. And so now they have something called WAGs. You speak of a queer community. I interviewed the wife of one of their teammates that are on the New York Liberty, and they love each other. So, and we're talking about their love and their relationship, and the story went viral.
Not only that, some fans we found online, it is one of the many things they enjoy about the sport. They're like, sure, you have the typical sports rivalries and drama, but have you ever seen two exes battle it out on the court, or like people who were dating and are no longer it basically takes some of the drama that sports and sports press always plays up, and it's somehow amped to 10 in a league full of personalities.
Full of personality. By the way, all I need is a storyline and a character, and I'm invested. And that's what they've been doing. They've allowed these women to be quote unquote characters in the best of ways and tell us their storylines. And it's selling, and people are into it, and it makes sense. This past All-Star for WNBA, there was the girls called the Stud Buds. Are you familiar with the Stud Buds?
No.
I know it's
Say more.
Okay, these are my favorite, right? They are a viral sensation. Both of these ladies play for the Minnesota Lynx, and they wear their hair cropped and short, and it's pink. And they did a live stream, a 24-hour live stream, and the live stream at one point had hundreds of thousands of people tuning in once people caught on. The next day, people who have not been fans of the WNBA, Dave Portnoy, he loves Caitlin Clark. He only talks about her. But Dave Portnoy is like, the Stud Buds are heroes. They're my stars. I love them. And they were running around being their authentic selves, flirting with Angel Reese, trying to talk to different, it was just really
but think
fun.
about how far we've come from Don Imus legendarily saying,
oh my gosh,
nappy-headed hoes talking about Black women athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have the equivalent of Portnoy, right? In terms of being a major personality.
And he's on their team. He's saying, I love it now. You're starting to see a shift because you can't deny that one, it's culturally relevant. Two, it's the world that we live in. Three, these women at the end of the day, though, between all the fun and you laugh and the joke, they are ballers. They play well. And it's not a comparison to men. I mean, they really are superstars out there on the court and or field. The same thing with athletes. The things that we can see what they do, you're like, oh, well, I appreciate the fact that you are a true, pure athlete. Have you ever heard the conversation, and I know you have, who's your GOAT? And I remember before it was in vogue, I was like, here are my GOATs. If I had to say, I just threw them all together. Of course, it would be Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. But I would always throw in this name. And then they would say, no, you can't. Serena Williams. They would wait, no.
Why do people argue about greatest of all time and Serena? Honestly, it's one of the more baffling things to me where I'm just like, what's the incentive to discount? What do you, is there a prize you win for not admitting this woman is the greatest of all time?
The greatest of all time. And I'm like, is it assigned to a gender? Can a GOAT only be the greatest of all time? Can only be a man? No, I'm talking about period. End of conversation. You know what I mean? When you talk about the best of sport and what you do, and I'm not separating the two. We'll get there. We're not quite there, but we will get there.
Okay, we're talking about eyeballs. We're talking about this tipping point for the league. And as a result, the women are stepping up and saying, you know what? We deserve higher salaries. We deserve revenue sharing. And you even had a player speak publicly criticizing the commissioner for a variety of reasons, But one of the more salient to our conversation is her effectively saying she thinks that she's doing us a favor, that being in the league is about when we are doing them a favor. Can you talk about this clash between the union and the commissioner?
Kathy Engelbert is the commissioner, and she has seen the WNBA through unprecedented growth. I will say that. Yeah. Kathy came from Deloitte, and she brought her business mind and business sense to the WNBA, and it has grown.
Hired by Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner. So just to be clear, he is her boss, and he has said, look, they're going through growing pains, which I thought is kind of a rough thing for your boss to say.
They've been going through growing pains. If I'm honest with you, they've had several commissioners that they haven't really settled on one. It's been a lot of turnover, and she came along, Kathy Engelbert came along, and she quieted things, and she's watched crazy growth. In the process, because I believe she is so business-minded, the players feel as if they are commodities. They don't feel any humanity. They don't feel as if she has a connection with them for various reasons. And so right now, they're in the middle of a collective bargaining agreement. But to Kathy's credit, she negotiated. I don't know if it was just her by herself, and I don't know if it was easy to do, but she has been able to negotiate a huge media rights deal, which means the women will get paid more because people will be watching them, and different networks, i.e. ESPN, Amazon, are fighting for that right. We're fighting for the right to air NBA and WNBA, and it'll be split on NBC/Peacock. It will be on Amazon, and it'll be on ESPN/ABC. These are all the deals. She's negotiating the same deals that the NBA is negotiating. And so to her, I'll give her credit for that. What has happened, though, while she is getting them some of the foundational dollars that they deserve, the players have felt ignored and unheard of. Napheesa Collier, most recently, and she's with the Minnesota Lynx, during her exit interview, decided not to actually talk about some of the basic X's and O's. She had a letter with quotes, i.e. receipts, based on a conversation she had with Kathy Engelbert. And she said, we have the worst leadership in the world. And no one wants
And that's a quote, by the way, Carrie. You were not just paraphrasing there. That is an actual thing she said. And she basically said the league has made it clear it isn't about innovation. It isn't about collaboration. It's about control and power.
Yeah.
And she says, I've earned this platform and I paid the price to get here. And she felt like she had to speak up. And what surprised me is this was a unifying moment, right? Like you had Caitlin Clark as well. Like everybody was weighing in on, well, actually, yeah, we think this isn't great.
And it's because every time Kathy has had an opportunity privately and publicly to defend the players, she went on, I don't know if you remember the CNBC moment when they asked her about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the race issue that she might have. She immediately did not answer that question and talked about the dollars and the investment. And
the race issue, meaning people were talking about racial harassment against Black and brown players as a result of fans who felt like Clark was being unfairly targeted.
Correct. And they created new fans, the growing pains of new fans, if you will, wanted to pick a side. People were weaponizing Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and using them for their own benefit. And she totally bypassed that question. And obviously, yeah, you're on a business channel, but she went to the business of it all. That was one moment that really upset the players that they still talk about to this day. She had an opportunity to address the fact that the fans need to figure it out. There's some problems happening, these vulgarities. I'm talking to the peanut gallery that says, well, it happens in the men's sport. That's not the point. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a growing league in its infancy stages of mainstream, and people want to be able to say, this isn't okay. You want to feel as if you're protected when you're on the court. You don't want to feel like it's okay for Joe or Jill to scream obscenities at me because they paid $2,000 for a courtside seat. And so she missed that opportunity. And then privately, Napheesa Collier, who was obviously with the union, the players union, she said, hey, here are my issues. And she quoted how Kathy responded, which was, one of the quotes that she gave was that Caitlin Clark should be on her knees thanking me. You know what I mean? Thanking me that she has this new media rights deal, or that she's in the WNBA, because she couldn't make all the money off the court that she's making if she wasn't in the WNBA. And so as Napheesa is saying the quiet part out loud, players are so excited and they're like, finally someone has the guts to say what we have been told not to say. That this is how the players felt. And then they quietly and not so quietly went online and said, thank you, Nafisa Collier, for doing this.
But I can see how that would be a problem, because if you've alienated the new fans, let's say the Clark fans, and then you've alienated the old fans and the players they represent, now you've got Engelbert in the position we saw her in the past week, where she's getting booed when she's on the court.
Yeah. You know, Natasha Cloud, who plays for the New York Liberty, said something the other day at a rally, at a panel I saw her on. She goes, Cathy Engelbert had, and maybe still has, the perfect opportunity to be the biggest girl's girl. She has the best opportunity to really support women, and she could be screaming for the rooftops for all of us. But we just don't feel like she wants to be in the room with us. We feel like it's a solo mission of what she wants to do about putting herself at the forefront, not the entire league. And she's like, she has this opportunity to be the biggest girl's girl, meaning like, promote us, be one of us, come with us, stand arm in arm. Don't make us feel like you don't want to be with us and it's just about you. And I really felt that from Natasha Cloud. Like, she's a veteran player in the league. She's seen several commissioners come and go. She's seen this new growth. She's seen what it's done for her. And she's speaking really in a way that, to me, it really personified why Cathy Engelbert is not liked by her. And I'm not going to say by everyone, but there's a sentiment of dislike and what about us? And I don't know what these phone calls are like, because I hear that as the CBA is going on right now, the collective bargaining agreement, they've made some headway in terms of minimum and maximum. And these are all according to reports. Nothing is finalized.
You mean, right?
The minimum pay right now lives somewhere between 75, maybe. If you're a rookie, they're thinking of bringing you in somewhere between 250 and 3 right now.
What?
$250,000.
Wait. Rookies would go from
75, around 75,000 to about 250, 300. This is where the wild, right?
Honestly, just when I think of something like minor league baseball, like the negotiations they've had, the struggles they've had with pay for, in those systems, and like, that's massive. That's a massive leap.
It is. And the women will still tell you it's not enough, but it is massive considering where they're coming from.
That's true.
These are all reports. They haven't settled yet. And the max, there was a report the other day that the max is somewhere bubbling around 850. So not that they're at 1 million, but bubbling at 850. And maybe but the women still want more. The players are still asking for more.
And I'm not saying they don't deserve it. It's just, to me, a sign of just how much more money they're making, that they could even make that offer, that the league has gone to this point where, as you said, there's so many deals coming in, and even rumors about expansion. And I mentioned earlier these potential other leagues. Like, I heard of a 3-on-3 kind of league, that's exhibition type thing somebody wanted to launch. Like, there's other people out there who can say, hey, WNBA, you don't want to pay her? I'll pay her.
Yeah. You know why Nafisa Collier, I think, was the perfect spokesperson to say the quiet part out loud? She and her husband and Breanna Stewart created Unrivaled, which is the 3-on-3 league that's based in Miami, that says to the players, you don't have to go overseas, come here. Not only will we start you at a quarter, which is about $250, but we're going to give you an ownership. We're going to give you an ownership percentage in the league. And they have been signing Juju Watkins, which is a huge NIL deal. She plays at USC. They signed Paige Beckers when Paige Beckers was coming out of UConn. And because she has created, with the help of her husband and Breanna Stewart and some other investors, they've created a model that invests in the women and gives them ownership. She knows that it can be done. And so that's why I felt it was the perfect moment for her to say that quiet part out loud, speaking directly to Cathy. Like, look what Cathy invited the players to do that. She said, you want to create your own league? So be it. And then they did. And people like it. And it's popular. And the women are getting paid.
But you could see why people would say, like, good luck. You know what I mean? Because it's been such a long road. It's been such a long road. And it feels like it's one of those things where it just happens to be the wrong year to doubt potential financial investment in pro women's sports, especially where the WNBA players are right now. Like, Angel Reese is going to be a Victoria's Secret's Angels model. Like, You know what I mean?
The first ever athlete to do that. Yeah.
Which to me, I was like, that to me makes sense. It's a bunch of women with super long torsos. Sorry, Carrie, this is not a hit on you. But like, how have they not been tapped for this before? But they're really like, the world of fashion is opening up to them. All of these things are opening up to them. And it was like it was the wrong year for someone to be like, well, I don't know, try your luck somewhere else.
Try your luck somewhere. They have another league called Athletes Unlimited. Let me get the word out. And the reason why AU is doing okay, but not as popular was because it was a different model, right? And when they started it, the women weren't as popular. Now,
is it 5-on-5 or what is it? Okay,
yes.
So it's still 5-on-5.
Yeah, but Unrivaled isn't. Unrivaled isn't. And so, but the beauty of Unrivaled to me shows that you still have a loyal fan base. I think they would like to grow in different ways. I'm not saying it's better than the WNBA by no means. It doesn't have the same fan base. It doesn't have the same appeal. I'm not going to say that, but it's working to do that. It's a work in progress. And I think it's special because they have players from the WNBA, big name players from the WNBA who are doing their off season, instead of going overseas like they normally would, are saying, hey, I want to stay home. And why not spend a summer in Miami? Why not spend a summer in Miami doing what I love to do?
Carrie, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.